Hello and welcome to the video presentation of our paper Between Subjectivity and Imposition, Power Dynamics in Data Annotation for Computer Vision, co-authored by Martin Schuessler, who is also co-presenting today, Tianling Yang, and me, Milagros Miceli. This paper features a qualitative study informed by constructivist grounded theory and also by the three research questions you can now see on the slide. We conducted an investigation into work practices of data annotation in companies producing data sets for computer vision. More concretely, we conducted several weeks of field work at two annotation companies in Argentina and Bulgaria and interviewed annotators, managers, QA analysts, and computer vision practitioners. So in this paper, we define data annotation as sense-making praxis, where workers classify data, in this case image data, and allocate meaning through the use of labels. We also argued that interpretative work is informed on the one hand by the individual subjectivities of the annotators, but also, and this is the main point of our investigation, we argue that the work of data annotators is decisively shaped by corporate structures, organizational routines, and power dynamics. Now, previous research in the field of data annotation has largely focused on the individual subjectivities of annotators to account for bias labels, for example. However, our findings showed that industrial settings actually don't allow that much room for workers' preconceptions or biases to broadly affect data because their subjectivities, the subjectivities of annotators, are persistently constrained throughout hierarchical structures. And those structures are a reflection of power imbalances within the annotation companies, but they are also a reflection of power imbalances between the annotation companies, as service providers, and tech companies commissioning and also paying for the annotations. Consequently, workers, annotators, generally annotate data according to labels imposed upon them by their clients. In this paper, we illustrate through the description of three annotation projects how that imposition of meaning is stabilized in everyday work practices through the control exercised by managers and QA analysts. And also, we show how it is naturalized as business as usual. So in the end, power to impose labels and classifications upon data correlates with the position occupied by each actor, and more specifically, it correlates with the possession of capital or the possession of financial means or of influence of that actor. Labels imposed upon annotators and through them on data are hardly ever questioned, but even if annotators ever perceive those labels as opposing personal or corporate values, or even if they ever question the labels, the view persists that the one who is paying has the right to impose meaning. So power imbalances that are inherent to capitalism not only translate into asymmetrical labor conditions in the space of data annotation. Our findings showed that those very same power imbalances also decisively shape labels and data, and they will have later a crucial effect on computer vision systems that are trained on that data and on the individuals and communities impacted by those computer vision systems.
So from these findings, we distilled several implications for practitioners, namely that they need to document, reflect, and communicate the subjective choices that went into data annotations. And we see this as a responsibility of both the clients that are commissioning the annotation of data sets, as well as the management of the annotation companies. And the main solution here is documentation. So the purpose, the composition, and the intention of data sets should be documented. And this is actually a best practice that's being currently adopted in machine learning research. If you checked NIPS and ICML recently, you would have noticed that authors are now required to include a complete description of the data collection process, as well as the instructions given to annotators, the method of quality control, if the major contribution of a paper is a data set. And so translated into more practical terms, we suggest that companies really keep track of the instructions that they were giving to annotators. But we also suggest that documentation should be extended with a power-aware perspective to make explicit the structures, decisions, and actors, as well as the frameworks that have shaped the annotation of data. And how you would incorporate such a power-aware perspective we'll now illustrate with a couple of potential questions you might ask. So you could, for example, ask, whose product do the annotations serve and how? Whose rationales behind the taxonomies that were applied to data? Who resolved discrepancies in the annotation process? And who decided if labels were correctly allocated?
With this presentation, we hope we can inspire other researchers to make the work that goes into creating data for machine learning visible and to direct their attention to the power dynamics that shape work practices in this space. Thank you very much for watching.